Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 4, Episode number 20 for Monday, May 15th, 2017. My name is Graham Perrow, and with me, as always, are Tyler Fitch and the birthday girl, Melissa Daphne. Happy birthday, Melissa.
Thank you.
It was this past weekend. I don't think
it was
today,
yesterday.
Though, right?
I got to show
it was yesterday.
Birthday in the U.S. So yeah.
Excellent. So today we have probably a fairly short show because there was only 2 games to talk about. No predictions to talk about because we made our predictions based on the series, not on each individual game. But there was a little bit of news, and maybe we can talk about this first, and that is the playoff schedule. They've announced when the upcoming games are. Obviously, we knew this past weekend was Game 1, and this coming weekend is going to be Game 2 of the division finals. And mini game if necessary. Then we have a weekend off where nobody plays nobody. Then the finals run on the 3 weekends after that. So the weekend of June 3rd, June 10th, and then if necessary, June 17th. So if you follow NLL Fact of the Day on Twitter, and why wouldn't you, you found out that the 2009, 2010, and 2011 finals ended on this day in those years. So here we are 6-7 years later. We haven't even finished the division finals yet, and the finals are not for another month. So that's an awful lot of extra lacrosse, and it's not even that many extra games. It's just spread out over a longer period of time. Now, obviously, back in 2009, 10, 11, there were single game series, and now we have best of 2 or best of 3. Basically, they've taken those extra handful of games and put them 1 per week for the next month. So I'm not sure I like it. I understand why they're doing it. This coming weekend is the big NCAA tournament, and they don't want to. First of all, they don't want to compete with it, and second of all, I think that's all happening sort of in one central location, and they want to have a booth set up there and try and basically advertise themselves to. They've got tons of lacrosse fans and lacrosse players all hanging out there, and they want to say, hey, this is where you want to be. Follow Tom Schreiber and all you other field people and come play in the NLL. And so that's a great thing to do. And I meant to actually do some statistical investigation here and see what kind of attendance numbers you get in the playoffs versus the regular season. I have a feeling that playoff attendance in general is lower than regular season attendance in general, but I don't know that for sure. So basically, each time they're giving themselves a week to sell tickets, they're trying to maximize the number of tickets they can sell, maximize the number of time between games to give themselves as much time as possible to sell those tickets, so that they're not losing money in the playoffs. So I get why they're doing it, but it just seems to stretch things out an awful long time.
Also, Graham, since you're Canadian, this coming weekend is one of America's 3 biggest holidays, I would say, as far as doing stuff outside holidays, not just like Christmas, Thanksgiving, but it's Memorial Day. And that coincides with the collegiate championships. And it's a long weekend, and getting people to go to a game in Georgia or Colorado would not be a pleasant experience for either one of those teams.
It's actually Victoria Day in Canada as well, and I don't know, and you'd think I'd know after being alive for 47 years here, that whether those weekends always line up or just always get close, and I honestly don't know if that's the case, but it is a long weekend in Canada as well. So
I think they cut their losses there and said, all right, we're not going to compete with holidays, and we'll get people afterwards. It extends it another week, and I agree with you that a June 17th potential final, even a June 10th final, is a long, long time from when majority of people can keep their interest.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think interest is already starting to wane. I mean, when the Mammoth won in 2006, I was excited because it was my birthday weekend. And so basically the Mammoth won championship. I found out on my birthday, so it counts because I was in China. So it was technically my birthday when they won. So they won the championship on my birthday. Awesome. it's a whole month later. This is just crazy. And not only that, as we've talked about, splitting the games across. If I'm a fan and I want to go to the championship game and travel, you're potentially, because not everybody does live in the state or close to. Some people travel a few hours, several hours to get to the stadium that they go to. And so that would potentially be 2 dates. Some people like Tyler, who does massive travel. But even for us, I'm 20 minutes away from Mile High. Even if it was both games were there, if, not at Mile High, it's one of those days. At the Pepsi Center, it's still back-to-back games or back-to-back weekends. This time of year gets tedious. Lacrosse interest goes down because high school lacrosse has tournaments. You have semi-professional tournaments. You have the college stuff going on. There's so much right now that it actually worked better when the NLL finished kind of right before everything. But you could see the drop-off starting about mid-April because of all the high schools and stuff going on. This is just way, way too drawn out. And you got the Outlaws already going. So the MLL is, in their 4th week? It's just getting ridiculous. They need to... I really hope the new commissioner takes a second look at this and really looks hard at whether this is maximizing attendance, maximizing revenues, and helping the game, because as a hardcore fan, we're all saying, no, this really doesn't. And so your more casual fan, they've already lost them ages ago. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. We do have one comment on our YouTube chat, and if you're watching live, you can head over to the YouTube page, and there's a chat window there. The question from Anthony Garcia is, what happened to the Mammoth fans? And I was going to address this a little bit, or at least introduce it as part of the awesome, not awesome, probably not awesome section. But Melissa, I'll let you tackle this one first. Pretty low attendance in Denver this past weekend.
I was wondering the exact same thing. It was really low. And I know the Mammoth were trying to sell tickets hard. Every web page I was on had the Mammoth ad. I was getting bombarded with emails. Hey, go see the game. I didn't go to the game. Most of my friends didn't go to the game. I think part of it is the fact that in their entire history, the Mammoth have made it past the first round a now whopping 3 times. So I don't think that Mammoth fans really have very high hopes for this team. There's a lot of pessimism, and it's really hard to get excited, especially when you're watching a team like the Rush that is so dominant. I didn't expect them to win this game. It just didn't seem like a fun time to go and watch them get their butts handed to them. I'll watch it on replay. And it was my birthday weekend, so I was doing other stuff. But normally for my birthday, it was a big deal to go to the games and watch. So, I think it's a combination of pessimism. This time of year, the attendance always starts dropping towards the end of the season, the last game or two. We often have DU lately in the finals. So that attracts a whole lot of attention. Those seats actually get sold out. So that's a pretty big deal. And like I said, there's a lot of tournaments going on. There's just a lot going on in Denver in general. And so I think people's attendance or their attention is just a little too divided. And so when you have a team that you kind of expect to have not even made it past the first round, so they make it past the first round, I think a lot of people already had plans. Those that didn't kind of went, I don't know that I want to see them. So it's a combination of all those factors, but it did look pretty low. Then they're stating that there was 11,000 fans. That arena on the stream looked much, much emptier. I would say they were probably closer to 7,000 or 8,000. And that's kind of looking also at historic numbers for this time of year, what I would say is pretty accurate.
Yeah, I'd say you find out who the real diehard fans are in the first and second round of the playoffs, because teams are coming around asking for more money now. Most people don't include playoff tickets in their season ticket purchase. So they bought their season tickets, paid for those in the fall. Now they're coming around for more money. And people are like, whoa, Maybe I got to pick and choose. Like, I have enough money to go to a playoff game. I hope it's make it to the finals. I have to wait until then. If they don't have unlimited disposable income, they're not going to make every game. They're just kind of crossing their fingers to make it to the finals, and then they'll get a bump and get people to show up then. But the people right now are people who are just going to go regardless. Any game they can get, they're going to go to, and figure out that number is somewhere between 7,000 and 11,000 in Denver. But everybody struggles in the first few rounds, and you get to the finals, and not that all is well, but everybody would usually put on a good crowd in the finals matchup.
Yeah, I don't know if it's consistent with other teams. The Mammoth do also raise ticket prices for the playoffs too. So I think that dissuades some fans when your $25 seat is now suddenly $37 or something, because it's enough of an increase that you might think twice about it. If you're not a season ticket holder, it's much larger of an increase than if you are. And if you're a season ticket holder, it's still a pretty big increase. There was a couple years we actually debated whether or not to get the playoff tickets because it was going to cost us an extra, I think between all the seats, it was going to be an extra $80 or so. So yeah, it was a big enough deal that we almost didn't go. So I think even for your hardcore fans, like Tyler said, when you're looking in your wallet and going, okay, do I want this one or do I want this one? They're probably going to lose. Let's go to Elitch's or whatever. It's opening. So I think it's a catch-22 for them.
Well, if it's true that playoff attendance is generally lower than regular season attendance, I'm not looking forward to seeing the crowds in Georgia this coming weekend because they weren't getting all that many people in the regular season, and that doesn't bode well for the playoffs. And of course, there's been talk about what to do if Georgia makes it to the final, and their games are broadcast on Twitter and all this sort of thing. Do we want to broadcast the final games with 1,000 people in the arena? With these hundreds or thousands of empty seats, it's just going to look terrible. So even if the Swarm are giving away tickets by the bucketful, are we going to actually get enough people in there? Now, as you said, the finals are kind of a different beast. That once you're through and actually into the finals, where if you win it all, you win it all. It's not just you get to the next round. People may be more interested in coming to see that. And yeah, the team may paper the town with free tickets and say, this is the finals. This is the Super Bowl of lacrosse, so you want to be here. So I guess we can hope. But or like we said before,
adding on to that, we now got the potential third full game. So if you spend all your money for the June 10th game going, this is going to be it, and then it goes to June 17th, you may not have any more money to get those tickets because you may have flown out there, or you may have, peppered the city, like you said, and said, hey, this is it. And then they're going, wait, why is there another game? It's funny because for years I really kind of wish that we didn't have the one and done, but that had its own excitement. And I really am really missing that one and done because the game was on the line and you either brought it or you didn't. And sometimes the underdog won and they got their butts kicked the next week by the better team. Sometimes it was, down to overtime. I want the one and done back. I will be honest. I'm just not liking this new playoff format. We've had it, 3-4 seasons now? I hate it even more now than I did that first season. So
I think I'm okay with the best 2 out of 3 in the finals. I think I would also be okay with going back to one and done for the first 2 rounds. And if the finals, games 2 and 3, or even games 1 and 2, could be done on the same weekend. If you have one on the Friday night in one city and one on the Saturday night in another city, or Friday night and Sunday afternoon if you really have to. Like if they're in Vancouver and New England, back-to-back days, that's an awful long travel trip in between. So, but back-to-back in 2 different cities on the same weekend has been done before. It's not that unusual. So if they could kind of compress it that way and make it one and done for the first 2 rounds, best 2 out of 3, but in 2 weekends, not 3, for the finals, I think I'd be okay with that.
I would be okay if it was all done in one weekend, but I would argue that you could even do it in the same stadium. And yeah, it sucks to be the lower team's fans, but that's the way it is usually. It's kind of unusual that you're saying, hey, you're the lower seeded team, but hey, we're going to give you a home game too. You know what? That's just not the way it should work. Higher team gets home field. That's the way it is in every other sport. Let's do it. One weekend.
If
What do you
it's
think,
going to be
Tyler?
if it's going to be a best of 2, then that will work. If it's going to be a best of 3, trying to fill the arena trying to fill the same arena for 3 games in 2 or 3 days. I think we're going to see the same thing. You're going to see a good attendance at the first game, nobody at the second game, and a few people at the third game. The numbers are going to be all weird.
They kind of do that for the Man Cup, but it's very much your local team there in small arenas, so they can pack those. But it's not unprecedented in lacrosse to play that many games back to back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess if the Man Cup goes 7 games, you have 7 home games for one team and 7 away games for the other team.
And people keep showing up.
True enough. All right, we will move on to the games of the week. By now, you all know that Georgia beat Toronto 11-8, and Saskatchewan beat Colorado 18-9. And let's get into what was awesome and what was not this past weekend. I guess I will start. I'm going to start with the Swarm defense. And it's a little odd in that the Swarm have been known all season for their offense and just scoring goals by the bucketful. And their defense has been kind of overlooked. In some games, they were winning the game, 18-16 or 18-14 or something like that, which means their defense wasn't doing all that well anyway. But they certainly had their games where they were only allowing, 7 or 8 goals. In this one, their offense played fine, probably fairly low for the Swarm, but their defense was outstanding. So I thought Mike Poulin played very well. Yeah, I didn't think he was outstanding, but he played very well, particularly in the fourth quarter. But the defense was great. They just weren't allowing the Rock to get any shots anywhere. They couldn't get inside that, and like I said, Poulin wasn't outstanding, but he didn't need to be, because most of the shots he was getting were straight at him, or they weren't. They either were coming straight at him, or they were coming at such a weird angle that they were unlikely to go in anyway, because the defense was just doing such a great job. So, yeah, Swarm defense. Usually we're talking about the Swarm offense being awesome. This time it was the defense. Tyler, you can go next.
Sure. My first awesome was that fourth quarter run by the Saskatchewan Rush in the game against the Mammoth. They came out slow, and I think it was a 1-goal game in the fourth, and then it was game over. They kept scoring. Pretty much everything was going in. It was incredible to sit there and see, like, wow, everything goes in. Like, they can't do anything wrong in this game that was close, that completely matters because it's going to set the tone for the next game. It was fun to watch. Sorry, Melissa. And
That's what I expected it to be.
Yeah. To see an offensive performance like that is exciting. I mean, a good defensive battle, occasionally when you do it right, is great. But when a team is just score, I really enjoy watching those two. So that's what I got for our first one. What do you got, Melissa?
All right. So just comment on Tyler's. I used to absolutely hate knowing the score before I watched a game. That used to just wreck it for me. And now I actually kind of like knowing the score, because I always wonder, how did they get there? You'll have a complete blowout that actually wasn't until 8 minutes left in the game. You'll have one that looks really, really close, and it actually wasn't in general. So it's very interesting to see. And I got to say, as a Mammoth fan, this week was kind of nice knowing the score, because I never had my hopes up when I watched the game. I already knew. I had already expected them to lose, but I knew they lost. So it was okay. I could just sit back and watch the game. I wasn't overly frustrated or upset in any way. It was, this kind of sucks. But the Rush are awesome. I like the Rush. Sucks that it's my team facing them, but hey, I like the Rush, so I couldn't completely be upset. but I was very surprised to see that, hey, they actually were in it the first 3 quarters. And then the Mammoth I've come to expect to show up. Yep. Okay. That's kind of how it was. So in this case, it was kind of awesome knowing the score. But that's actually not my awesome. It was just kind of thinking that while Tyler was talking. My awesome actually piggybacks on Graham's, that that was such a defensive game between Georgia and Toronto, and especially, as Graham said, the Swarm are one of the highest scoring teams. I think the announcer said that they are the highest overall average scoring team in a season ever or something.
Not average, but total goals. Yeah.
Total goals. They said it was definitely something pretty crazy. So to see it be such a defensive game, I mean, it was midway through, let's see, the third quarter, and there were 7 minutes left in the third quarter, and the score was tied at 4. Who would have thought that with this game, that in the third quarter, with 7 minutes left, you'd have a score of 4 for each team? I don't think any of us expected that. So that was a pretty awesome, just to see that both defenses were just crazy good and shutting down these amazing offensive players. So that's pretty much my only awesome. So back to you, Graham.
All right. My next awesome was basically that. I was going to say the first one was the Swarm defense. Then my second awesome is the Rock defense. I mean, clearly they lost the game, but they basically allowed 9 goals to the best offensive team we've ever seen. Because 2 of the goals were empty net, so they kind of don't count. So 9 goals. They kept Lyle Thompson off the board entirely in terms of goals. Kyle Matisse off the board entirely. I think Miles Thompson had a goal. Where did it go? Randy Stotts had 1 goal. Miles Thompson had 1 goal. Matisse had nothing. Thompson had nothing. But Lyle. Jerome Thompson had nothing. So, I mean, you can't keep that team completely off the board. But the Rock have come basically as close as anybody has this season. Brandon Miller was outstanding in the first half and still very good in the second. I can't say much more about the Rock defense. They did a great job. The offense, I want to say the offense wasn't there, but it kind of wasn't their fault because the Swarm defense was so good. And I have 1 or 2 other things to say about that, but they're in the not awesome category, so we'll get there. I have 1 more, but Tyler, do you have any?
Yeah, I've got a couple more. The way I wrote this up is like, what's awesome is playing all 4 quarters, because the Mammoth kind of clearly didn't play the fourth quarter in their game in the way that game got away from them. Not that they weren't trying, but they were dominated and they kind of had nothing going for them. Toronto also did not fail to play the fourth quarter. The game was actually pretty close, but if you don't start fast, finish fast, and that's what the Swarm and the Rush did in the sense of playing all the 4 quarters. And I guess it's better to finish fast and not start fast, as they did. And the way those games played out, that the teams that had the week off could start slow, but once they got going, they said, hey, by the way, we're number 1 in our division both times. And made a big difference when they played through the whole game. So it's awesome to see the teams do that and not get frustrated or get down in the sense that, all right, now we had the week off, we have an excuse for playing poorly in the first half. Like, no, game's not over. They did a great job of playing through all 4 quarters to get their victories. What do you got, Melissa?
And that's actually interesting, because one thing I had noted that I wasn't sure where we were going to talk about was the fact that both teams that scored first lost their games. So the Mammoth had the first goal from Eli McLaughlin, and then Toronto had the first goal, which Graham could probably tell us who it was.
Dan Littner.
Yeah, so both those teams ended up losing. So there is something to said that maybe you can't say that Toronto thought they had the game, because it was, like we said, it was tied at 4 with midway through the third quarter, and it wasn't much different going into the fourth quarter, whereas the Mammoth game was a very different game going into the fourth quarter. So you knew They may have just burnt out. I don't know. I haven't understood what is with this team and not playing all 4 quarters all season or the past 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. I don't know. I lost track. So I have become a very jaded fan. Thank you, Mammoth. So that's about all I have. I have no more awesomes. So what about you, Graham?
I do have one more, and that is Adam Jones. I found him weirdly inconsistent in that you'll watch a game with him in it and he get a goal or a couple of assists or something, but for the most part he doesn't seem to be much of an offensive factor. And in other games he's just unstoppable, and it's weird how he'll go from one to the other. This game he was pretty good in the first half of this game, and then just turned into Magic Adam Jones in the fourth quarter, where he was unstoppable. And I think he scored 4 goals in the fourth quarter. Did I have that right? Yes, 4 goals in the fourth quarter within about 5 minutes. So, yeah, when he's on his game, definitely one of the best in the game, and a lot of fun to watch. And so I certainly found him awesome in this game. Tyler, you're next.
Yeah, my last awesome thing is not actually from the games, but from the league itself, because they sent out an email that said, please fill out our survey of NLL TV. And that was a fun moment of rage. I think I limited myself to about 6 actionable bullet points of things that they need to do to fix their application. And it was nice that they put out a spot where I could do that. It's like, are you going to pay for it next year? I was like, yeah, because I don't have any choice.
Won't be happy about it, but yes, I will.
Yeah. It's like, I know I'm leaving money on the table because you offered a 30% discount already earlier this season for next year. But I don't want that tool, the NLL TV app, so I'm just not buying it because it sucks. But I'm pretty sure they're locked in because they're taking money. If you're paying NLL TV for that, I'm pretty sure you're paying the same people for next year as this year. That's brutal. But it was a great experience to see that email come. It's like, whoo, I really get to tell them what I think. I don't know if the league's getting the email or the NLL TV are getting the email, but there's work to be done there. You got anything else, Melissa?
I have not awesomes, but my not awesome kind of ties into what you were just talking about. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick us off with the not awesomes. Because I had a complaint about the fact that there was no audio in the Mammoth game for the first 3 minutes. They didn't realize that there was no audio until after Eli McLaughlin scored, and then all of a sudden you had audio again. So from my understanding of the newest rounds of NLL TV commercials is that right now I've been watching for free. I don't mind a 24-hour gap. I don't need to watch live. In fact, it has made my life a little easier not trying to watch live like I used to be very, very, very adamant about. I used to schedule my life completely around the schedules. And now I don't do that as much. But if my understanding is correctly that is going away, and the only way I'm going to be able to watch is by paying for it, if it's what it is right now, I don't know that I would be okay paying for it. There's so many issues. Every weekend I have a different frustration, but I kind of buy it back because, hey, I'm not paying anything. I'll deal with it. I might grumble a little bit, but okay, it's still free. I'll watch your annoying ads that are 10 times louder than the game, all that stuff, because I'm not paying for it. You suddenly make me pay for it, which I know both of you are, so I'm the oddball. And I'm not going to be as accepting of all these issues. And I know there's been issues live, so it's not even that's solved. So I agree with Tyler. If they're moving forward with this, they need to fix some things. Even little things like, hey, let me fast forward, but go 5 seconds. Trying to go past halftime or the quarter breaks or, yes, the commercials, because I get tired of trying to grab the remote to mute the TV because it's obnoxiously loud. It's frustrating. It's just a frustrating experience. So
the company they used for the playoffs last year is a different company, and I found their interface to be really nice.
They were awesome.
They had a little button that said go forward 30 seconds or 15 seconds or go back 10 seconds or something like that. And so trying to get that, like if you're trying to drag the little slider thing and you want to see what was happening in the third quarter and you're only starting the game, drag it all the way across and then figure out where you are, and that's great. But if you, like you said, if you're trying to just skip a commercial and you grab that little thing and you try to move it just a little bit, oh, I moved it 7 minutes, so that's too far. Trying to get that right is just a real pain. So if you just had a button that said go forward 30 seconds and I have to click that once or twice or 3 times, that's so much easier. And I can't imagine why that would be a difficult thing to add to your UI. So the fact that some companies have it and others don't just means that the ones that don't haven't put the work into it, and that's kind of disappointing. Because like you said a long time ago when we talked about this, Tyler, this is a known and solved problem. These things have been out for a long time, and people know how to do them right. And so for the NLL to go with a company who doesn't seem to know that stuff yet is rather frustrating.
Well, not to mention, as you were saying, with the other company, because it's great when, like as we've discussed, sometimes a replay isn't shown. Well, you want to watch the replay, that makes it easy to watch the replay. And adding on to that, it was just, you could pause live TV on the other one. I don't know if you can pause the live TV on this one because I don't watch it live, but I know it doesn't react well when I have to pause the streamed game. It gets all garbled and I have to reset everything and then fast forward back to where I was. And I did not have a single issue with the company they used last year. I'm sure they went with this one because it was a whole lot cheaper. But as we have said before, you get what you pay for. If they were with that other TV system, I would have bought the season without even thinking twice. But this season, I've been struggling with it all season, and the fact that I found that if I waited, I could watch the games for free, there was no reason for me to pay for poor quality. So I didn't.
Yeah, disappointing. So disappointing. And I think
Okay, now I'm confused. I can't remember who started that one, but
Alyssa did.
We all kind of agreed on that one. Okay, I will go with my first not awesome of the day, and that is the fans in Toronto. And this has bugged me for a while. For the most part, fans in Toronto are fine. I don't have any problem with them being one myself, obviously. But I don't generally see a lot of fights in the crowd and drunk people throwing stuff and that kind of thing. It happens at every arena, I'm sure, and some are better than others, some are worse than others. And I generally don't find Toronto fans are all that bad. We see a game where they're embarrassing. I remember my first year as a Rock season ticket holder was in 2001, and this was obviously after the Rock had won 2 straight championships, and they had a great regular season. They went to the championship game again. Everybody was expecting them to win, and they didn't. The Philadelphia Wings came in and shut them down, and they won. And as soon as the game was over, people started throwing drinks and beers and things onto the floor near where the Wings were celebrating. I don't think they were actually trying to hit the players. They were just throwing drinks over in that area. And the PA guy came on right away and said, "Come on, people, we're classier than this. Let's not throw stuff onto the floor." And this past weekend, I saw it again. They weren't throwing drinks, but before the game and before the previous game, they gave out these white towels, the rally towels, and you spin them around. And it looks pretty good when everybody in the arena is all doing this. But after a couple of calls that the refs had made, they were goal challenges, and neither of them went the Rock's way. One was a Rock goal that was called back, and another one was a Swarm goal that was at first called back, and then after the review, they allowed it. Both calls were correct. They made the right calls, but the Rock fans booed the crap out of the refs and started throwing these towels on the floor. And at least 2 or 3 towels were thrown on the floor after these calls. And then something later in the game, another Georgia goal, and I think it might have been like their last goal or something that kind of put the nail in the coffin. More of these towels were thrown. One of the Georgia players, Chad Tutton, I think it was, had what looked to be a leg cramp, and he was rolling on the floor in obvious pain for a few minutes. and the trainer went out and tried to, massage his leg and straighten it. He wouldn't straighten it, and he was obviously in quite a bit of pain for a few minutes. And then it went away. He got up and walked off the floor on his own power. Like he was limping a little bit, but not much. So I guess people thought, well, obviously he wasn't really hurt, so he's faking it. And they started booing the crap out of him. And that really pissed me off, because unless it's an obvious dive for a particular reason, then sure, you can boo him. But you don't just boo somebody because they got hurt. And there was no reason in the world for him to be faking an injury at that point. It's not like The Rock were gaining momentum and let's shut the momentum down before they start coming back. Well, no, they still had 3 or 4 goals to go in only a minute or two. And as a Rock fan, I certainly didn't feel like The Rock had any momentum. So there was really no reason for him to fake an injury, and yet the players or the fans were booing him. So I was quite disappointed with that, and I'm gonna call that not awesome for sure. Tyler, you're next.
I'm going to go with not awesome from that Toronto game of the decision to sit Nick Rose and play B. Miller. I understand that he had a good game last week, but there's no part of that says to me, you start your number one goalie. You sit your number one goalie, arguably one of the top goalies in the league, just because the other guy had a good session of relief the week before. I think they should have played Nick Rose in that game and go with the guy who got you there. It was an odd choice for me that The Rock made. I mean, it wasn't totally surprising. It was something that was talked about during the broadcast the week before, as Brandon Miller was having a good game. And what do you do the following week? But I think the reality is you should play your number one guy. And I don't know if it cost them, because honestly, the start that Brandon had was phenomenal. And a couple empty netters don't count against him. But it could have been a little bit different, and maybe just enough different to swing things in the Rock's favor if they'd played Nick Rose instead. That's my not awesome there. Got any more, Melissa?
So my not awesome is pretty much the one I've already harped on. The Mammoth in the fourth quarter. Their defense was really just non-existent. They were pretty much letting the Swarm not the Swarm. See, it's just one of those rares. They were letting the Rush just take pretty much any shot they wanted. They looked flat-footed. They looked off their game. The offense looked flat. So yeah, my team, who I've already harped on pretty much this entire hour, they just sucked, as I expected them to, which I hate the fact as a fan since the first season that I'm thinking this way about my team. So that's not awesome as well. What about you, Graham?
I'm going to go to the Mammoth game as well. And this is a specific play that I thought was kind of weird. In third quarter, Adam Jones grabs the ball, runs at the net, dives across the crease as he loves to do, and I can't remember if he sort of shot it forward or if he shot it backwards over Ward's shoulder, but in either case, he scored. The goal was immediately waved off because the ref said he stepped in the crease. And when Jones saw the ref wave it off, he immediately ran back to the bench and started signaling, throw the flag, throw the flag, throw the flag. So the coach, Mammoth coaches waited for a couple of minutes, the Rush coaches waited for a few minutes to see what the replay was going to be, and the replay never came. So before the time ran out, they said, okay, well, we're going to have to just trust that Jones knows what he's talking about, and they threw the flag. And then they showed the replay, and he stepped in the crease by a mile. Like, it wasn't even close. The challenge must have taken like 10 seconds. They rewound the thing and they looked and said, yep, he stepped right in the crease. In fact, I think his toes were over the line inside the dark area of the crease. So it wasn't even close. So I guess I have two questions. Why did Jones signal for the flag in the first place? I mean, when he's running towards a net, he's not looking at his feet. I'm sure he's trying to make sure he stays out of the crease, but he can't be looking at his feet because he's looking at the goal. He has to look to see where he's going to shoot and where he's going to jump and stuff. So he couldn't have been looking at his feet, because if he was, A, he's not looking at the goal, and B, he would have seen that he stepped way into the crease. But The other question is why the replay wasn't shown. And we probably won't know. There are probably some technical issues here and there, and accidents are going to happen. I get that. But the league has mandated that all goals that are in any way close have to have replays shown for the home team or for the away team. And I'm curious as to whether the home team is punished in some way, or there fines if a lot of the other team's goals are not shown on replay, or if it's just well, we've told them they should do it and they should do it. And yeah, so I'm just curious as to what repercussions come from that, because it obviously didn't help the rush, because they threw the flag when they wouldn't have had they seen the replay, and obviously that took the flag away. They don't have that option again. So
it wasn't a goal though. Did the Mammoth fail to show it if it wasn't a goal, called a goal the first time through?
There was no replay at all. They
but he didn't. Therefore he didn't score a goal, and they didn't have to show a replay.
Well, I think that's part of the rule is goals that are close or non-goals that are close. Basically, if there may be a possibility that the flag might be thrown, then the replay needs to be shown.
But you said close, so maybe they could. Because I do think there's a penalty if it's not. But you said close, so they may have looked at it and said, "Oh, that's a clear crease violation. They don't need to see that," and moved on. It wasn't one of those. Wait, did that bounce off the post and go in, or did that spin out? It wasn't one of those. So they may have felt, "Oh, this is obvious enough. We don't need to show that replay." So
yeah, that could be.
I guess they only have to show
does that
replays for goals that are called goals. I think that's probably the only requirement that they actually have. Because I know it's too subjective otherwise.
Well, yeah, I guess my point, or the question is, if that's the case, does the video replay guy get to make that decision? Like, oh, that's close enough that we should show it. This one's not close enough. We won't show it. I mean, clearly, if somebody takes a shot from 30 feet away and it goes in, and no other player is anywhere near the crease, and there was 12 seconds left on the shot clock, okay, we probably don't need to replay that one. But how much leeway did they get before they're allowed to say, well, that wasn't close enough, we won't bother showing the replay?
Well, that does kind of bring into question, because I think most teams, regardless, if it was shot on net and it had the potential to be a goal, that they tend to show that replay. So that does go back to maybe the home field working to their advantage just a little bit. And I think that's why there is a penalty now, because in the past there were teams that if it was the opposing team, they were refusing to show the goal, regardless of what it was, because they didn't want to pull back. So I definitely think there's some fudging potentially going on there. But at the same time, it seems like no matter what, the offensive players, if they scored and it gets waved off, they're like, oh, throw the flag. Doesn't always work. And there's been a lot of times they've gone with what the player said, and it was wrong.
Scorers have never missed a goal in their lives.
Exactly.
And I've certainly seen plays like that where the goal is waved off and the player says throw the flag, and they throw the flag, and it turns out he wasn't excuse me, he wasn't in the crease. But in this case, it wasn't even, well, his toes were in the crease, so we'll have to call that back. No, his entire foot was in the crease. It wasn't even close. So I'm curious as to what made Jones decide that it should have been reviewed, because clearly
he scored a goal.
Probably. That was probably close enough. All right, so that's my not awesome. That was just a weird play.
Sure. My next not awesome is kind of possibly, it's not a strong not awesome, but it's not awesome, is having the week off and resulting slow starts for the Swarm and the Rush. There's not enough teams in the league to have both teams like a 1 and a 4 and a 2 and a 3. I mean, technically there are, but then everybody's in the playoffs and there's no point. So then getting back into our previous discussion around having a series or one game. Forcing a team to take a week off and then giving them only one game in the second round of playoffs could be a very dicey proposition if they take a little while to get going. So they kind of have a good little sweet spot that accounts for the fact that, hey, you got to bye. You get to get healthy and get ready for your playoff series against one of these two teams that's coming for you. And you don't have to worry about having a bye and coming out cold and losing it all in one game. That would be tough. But still, the season's running too long. So I don't know what the balance. I don't have any solution to my problem, but I think I have a problem with taking a week off and then getting these teams out there against the teams that are, playoff caliber teams. They both won, but they did not start in a position where you think that they necessarily would. So again, kind of have a problem. I have no solution, but it could be a lot worse if the teams were getting a bye and they had to win one game regardless. So it's better than it could be. Do you have any other not awesome, Melissa?
So my not awesome is a little bit rumor, but it's from a friend who was firsthand there, so I do kind of trust it. But apparently Adam Jones was getting into it with the fans. It was getting quite lippy with and using quite a few curse words. So I thought that was pretty not awesome. I understand Timbers get up. There's some players that are known for it, a la Sean Evans, Billy D. There's some players that they take great pride. But I guess because as a Mammoth fan, I've always seen Adam Jones as kind of that quiet grinder, and he just really just goes out and does his job, and the rest of it just goes away. So to hear that he was getting into it with a Mammoth fan is just like, what? But, I've also heard John Gallant, who's one of the nicest guys I think I've ever met, apparently is one of the best trash talkers on the floor and gets under people's skin in a way that no one else can. So, I guess you got to watch the quiet ones. But for me, it was kind of not awesome to hear that Adam Jones may have been a little, I don't know. Because I don't want to say disrespectful, because it is completely in his right to voice his frustration with a fan that is maybe getting a little too aggressive. But it's just, it's also kind of not awesome. So that's all I got. What about you, Graham?
It's also disappointing that a fan of the team that he played for a number of years and played very well for decides to be disrespectful to him just because he plays for a different team now.
Well, they may not have known him from the former team, I'll be honest. We've been at games where you have fucking fans, booing the Canadian anthem and things like that. And it's like, would you sit your ass down? Half the team's from Canada.
So these guys are all Canadian, right?
Yeah, and I think that's actually what we said. So I think it could have been a completely ignorant fan. But even still, you don't like to hear about those kinds of things going on, because it adds to the Bush League-ness, I guess. So.
All right, my last awesome is a quick one. We noticed that Brett Hickey was not on the floor for the last 10 or 15 minutes at least. I didn't actually notice when he stopped playing, but I noticed at one point that he wasn't on the floor, and I saw him on the bench. And then the next offensive shift, he was still on the bench. And the next offensive shift, he was still on the bench, and he never played again. A friend of mine did notice when he was on an offensive shift earlier, and he came off either holding his shoulder or his arm. And then he went out again for the next shift, and he came off early, again holding his shoulder or his arm. And that was it. He never hit the floor again. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of 2015, where he missed the last Rock playoff game, which happened to be the finals, because he was injured. Hopefully it was just a temporary thing. They decided to keep him off for the rest of that game, and he'll be out and as strong as ever this coming weekend. Tyler, do you have any more?
I am all out of not awesomes. How about you, Melissa?
Yep, I think I've grumped enough.
All right. Normally we would move on here to our predictions, but we don't have any to make. We decided to make our predictions on who's going to win the series, not each individual game. So we'll just go over those quickly. Melissa and I went for Georgia over Toronto. Tyler thinks the Rock will come through this coming weekend. And all three of us chose the Rush over Colorado. And if the fourth quarter of last Saturday's game is any indication, that looks to be what's going on. But we've seen turnarounds before, so we're not going to call it over until it's over. So that will do it for this week. So, like I said, only a couple of games to talk about, but we managed to stretch it into almost an hour. So lots to talk about, I guess. If you guys don't have anything further, I guess that will do it for this week.
I'm good to go. I think it'll probably be, we'll figure it out afterwards, but are we going to record next week about this week's games, or are we going to wait until there's a break coming up? We'll figure it out.
Well, it's the long weekend, so probably next Monday.
Yeah. So our game's next weekend after that. Okay, thanks.
So so next weekend. Yeah, okay, all right. I think I'm off by a weekend because next weekend is the long weekend in Canada, not the weekend after. So
yeah, and still 2 weeks till we have it here. Okay, thanks, NLL.
Okay, so I guess that will do it. So this has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.